Joining us today is Tripp Ferrer, a seasoned operations leader with a track record of driving efficiency, scaling businesses, and optimizing processes through strategic execution. With expertise spanning supply chain, process improvement, and post-merger integrations, Tripp has led transformations that delivered exponential profit growth and operational efficiency. In this episode, we'll dive into his career journey, leadership philosophies, and how he applies the theory of constraints to solve complex operational challenges. Tripp, so great to have you. Thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me, and thank you for all you do.
Absolutely. So, well, jump right into the questions. What moment in your career has taught you the most?
There's a lot of moments that I've had where I've learned. I think the one that really stands out to me is when somebody took a chance on me and gave me a chance to lead a team. I'd always viewed leadership not as something tied to title, but tied to actions. But being given the title and authority there really gave me a chance to elevate the folks I worked with and really to help teach people and learn and expand the impact I could make. So being given that chance when I was at Nivel to lead the purchasing team is really the moment that catapulted my career and allowed me to move to that next level, metaphorically and literally. And being able to go there and help develop and bring people in and see them grow and blossom really is the moment that changed my career the most, I believe.
That's really interesting. I love that it's watching your people grow is what was that moment for you. So I think it says a lot about how you think about leadership. So I really appreciate that answer. When your colleagues or team members describe you, what 3 words would they consistently use?
They could be analytical, driven, and collaborative. Let me delve in there a little, if I may. I love breaking down complex problems. I think that goes back to my engineering mind for better and worse. Apologies to those for worse. But getting into that data-driven analytics and using that to drive what we're doing has made a world of difference on the teams I'm on. And I'm driven, and that I know can be a double-edged sword, the word driven. I really try to elevate my teams to do more than they ever thought they could. I'm big on lean and theory of constraints, as you mentioned in the intro. We'll talk a little bit about that, I'm sure. But eliminating that non-value add work and really focusing on the work that moves the needle. So when I'm at work, I want to get my work done. I really want to make results. I really want to move the needle for the company. That being said, I also want to go home and see my kids. I have a 7 and a 9-year-old. So I don't expect to be working all hours of the night and all weekends, but I really want to make that impact and get things done while I'm there in the moment. And the collaborative, getting things done just within my team doesn't make the company better. I have to work cross-functionally to really make an impact and also to know what needs to change. So being able to work cross-functionally, collaborate with others, understand how what my team is doing impacts the greater company, and understand how to work together with other leaders to drive the company forward really helps make a bigger impact and also helps eliminate the waste of making my team work really well in a way that doesn't does nobody any good. So collaboration is a must.
I think that's really important too. And you highlighted it in your first answer as well, that it's not just about the title. And what I've learned over my career is that a lot of leadership is about how you may or may not need to lean on other people, not in your direct employee, that you need them to do certain things to achieve the greater goals, but learning those soft skills of how to lead people that you're not really their manager and how to make sure everyone's collaborating together is so critical. And I think you hit it right on the head.
100%. It's got to get the vertical and the horizontal impact. That's how you make the broadest and most impactful progress.
Exactly. So outside of your professional achievements, what passion project or personal interest has taught you skills that make you better at what you do?
Back in 2013, I was an engineer for Mercedes, and I built a 1963 Morris Minor. I'm going to go full gearhead for a moment here. We took a S10 chassis, dropped the Chevy 350 in it with a TH350 trans, swapped the rear end out from an Oldsmobile Bravado and put it on that S10 that we cut 4 feet out of the frame, rebuilt the engine, put in a full roll cage, full custom build. I did it for the Grassroots Motorsports 2013 Challenge, which means my budget was $2,013. So I learned a lot about budget management, a lot about working with people, learning from other people, really pulling together a team. So it may sound completely tangential in most work, but seeing that I was working quality in Mercedes, that hands-on experience of rebuilding a motor myself really helped get a little more in depth on the day-to-day work there. And really also showed how sometimes initially I was going to build a chassis myself, but I realized it was actually cheaper to find a totaled out vehicle and take the chassis out from underneath it, cheaper and safer than it would be to go and build that custom fabrication. So being able to look at that and apply it to things like an ERP system, it's sometimes cheaper, more affordable, easier and quicker to market to take an off-the-shelf one than to go and custom build it yourself. I think of that as a direct analogy of that chassis. Taking that S10 chassis and modifying it to fit, no different than taking Microsoft Dynamics and modifying it to work with the needs of a company for a configure price quote module to make things more effective and efficient.
Those are fantastic answers and quite a stretch to go from the car analogy to that, but it's brilliant. It's right on the money. And it's funny, I've never been a car guy, but I have been hanging around with my father-in-law, who is a car guy and loves to watch Motor Trend channel all day, every day, if he could. So it is a fascinating thing. And I've seen that same mentality of let's take a wreck or let's take a rusted out old husk, use that because it's better than starting or trying to build it from scratch. And I think that's a really, really interesting skill set that you bring to the table as well. So fascinating stuff.
And shameless plug, if you want to see a picture of it, check out my LinkedIn banner.
Fantastic. We'll make sure that's in the show notes. I love it. So can you tell me about a mentor?
Sure thing. A gentleman, Rob Darrow, who I worked with at Nivell, he really took me under his wing and taught me a lot. At that point, I was finishing up my MBA. I had a master's in systems engineering, but Rob really helped me to think of work not just as what you learn in the textbooks, but a little more philosophical, if you will. So he taught me a lot of frameworks like the Johari principle, Eisenhower matrix. The one that really stands out, though, is, and this isn't to be taken literally, it's more of a Pareto analysis where it's usually directionally true. But a lot of times in corporate America, 2/3 of the work that people do is non-value add. It's those meetings that could have been an email, it's the PowerPoint slides that never get presented. So finding ways to mitigate the work you're doing that's non-value add, maybe you have to do the slides, but maybe you don't polish them until you know which ones are being presented. Yeah. If you have the meeting that's going nowhere, maybe you cut it 15 minutes short. And finding the little wins like that, if you can take that 2/3, let's use it as a directional number and assume it's true. If you can say, hey, let's only waste 13 to 14 hours a week. Instead of 2/3, you're now wasting 1/3. And the team can be twice as effective by taking that mentality. We're not looking for perfection here. It's looking for improvement and better. So none of the numbers would be looked at as an exact measure or science, but it's more of a concept of, hey, let's focus on the value add and let's really lean into those value add activities. I don't care if somebody in their year-end review has a misspelling. As we were chatting on the front end, I grew up and faced dyslexia as a kid, was able to overcome it, got 2 master's degrees, so I did okay. I'm the last one to judge somebody for typos or spelling. But I think that sometimes a lot of effort and value gets lost in trying to make those internal emails perfect. If somebody on my team emails me and misspells a word, I'm not so concerned. It's more about the content and moving the team forward and back to that collaboration and what matters.
Yeah, I think it's also, you keep referring to delivering the value, and that is so critical. If it's not just about being busy, it's about what did you bring value. So thoroughly agreed. What book or podcast has influenced you?
Other than yours, Paul?
Well said.
I'm going to go with The Goal. It's The Theory of Constraints, written by Goldrat in the 80s, and I think it's more pertinent than ever. It's focusing on finding the bottlenecks in systems and then really subjugating the rest of the system to that bottleneck. And it goes to the same as what we've been talking about. What is value? How do you bring value to the organization? I like to define value as things that customers willing to pay for, makes the company money, makes the people at the company have a better life, and makes the customer's life better. So what you're doing is trying to focus on that value there. And as things flow through a process, be that a manufacturing plant, data analysis, a sales process, we want to make sure that we're bringing the value out and also finding what are those bottlenecks so that we can drive the system based on the bottlenecks and induce a state of flow. Often people try to sub-optimize a system and say, hey, part X, part Y, part Z needs to be fixed, but are they actually fixing the system or are they working around the true constraint of the system? So really some quick analysis, and usually it's no harder than when I was at Firehouse Subs, looking where's the pile of bread sitting? That's your bottleneck. Help alleviate that bottleneck and then make things flow better so that the true system induces that state of flow. And you're really hitting where things are easier. I saw a quote from Adam Grant today talking about inducing that state of flow within your career. And really when you get to that state of flow, it's when that effortless work is being done. And that's how you know you're getting the best out of your teams. You're getting to where you're not having all that waste and all that time spent inefficiently.
That's fascinating. Fascinating stuff. If you could spend a day learning anything from anyone, living or historical, who would that be and why?
I thought a good bit on this one. I'm really glad you gave me a little cursor to look ahead. I think I'd actually go for something a little out of the box here. And I think I'd go for Siddhartha, the original Buddha. Being somebody who's worked in corporate America, come up through some of the Fortune 10 companies, spent a lot of time on efficiency, looking at a very different perspective, I think would be very helpful. The idea of letting go of that which doesn't matter, accepting the fact that there's pain and growth in the world, and then getting that broader perspective would really help out. Not to mention Nirvana is one of my favorite bands, so I'd love to hear his perspective on Teen Spirit.
I think that's brilliant. I think that's absolutely brilliant. And I agree. I think there's so much that we can learn from different cultures and different ethos that really can help people and help businesses. I think that's right on the money. So that we'll kind of wrap it up here with, what do you see as the future of your industry?
Shane O'Kelly, who was president of HT Supply, always said the rate of change is never as slow as it is today. So it's always getting faster. That rate of change is always increasing. And I think from an operations perspective, that really matters. Whether that's delivery to a customer or internal operations, delivery through a system. The customer expectations, both internal and external, are always improving faster than the internal processes can improve. So managing those expectations and being able to deliver them is critical. I think that as we look at AI coming in, that's only going to accelerate that. And it also gives us a chance, though, to look at a broader perspective on data. Whereas at Mercedes-Benz, trying to find the biggest customer complaints on a given part was usually very time consuming. Now that's something that we could drop the data into AI and in a matter of seconds have answers. So I think when we look at that integration of AI and more systems coming into corporations, data analytics, systems, Excel, SQL, none of that's new to companies. There's still a lot of companies who don't, from an operational perspective, gather the most pertinent data. Some of the companies who do then also miss the mark on the humanity end of it. So being able to understand that blend of humanity coupled with data, coupled with how does it actually lay into the strategy of the company, and are you collecting the right data to know how the needle's moving? It all really is going to drive how operations moves in the next decade in my mind. So a good example on, as we're trying to fine tune the data and understand what really matters. When we're at Firehouse Subs, we're trying to find ways to improve the kitchen flow, make things work better. We found through optimizing our system, we could get down to making a sandwich in about 2 minutes. At that point, customers may want faster sandwiches, but if you're getting one out in 2 minutes, going to 1:45 may not really be driving the needle for the customer decision, but having the consistency is what drives the needle. So people know what to expect. And that's not just a sandwich. The same thing when when I was managing the rebates at Home Depot Pro. One is giving out dough, the other is giving out bread. But the customers want to have reliable, consistent results that they know they can count on. And I think that is going to get more so important and more front of mind. And as customers get better tools on their own end, there's going to be higher expectations there to deliver on, both on the B2B and B2C ends.
I think you're right on the money. And AI should allow us to build systems to be able to deliver on that customer expectation. But again, it comes back to it's the experience of the client that is foremost. And if you get a chance to listen to some of our other podcasts, a lot of what people are trying to build, or I think the people that are getting the most out of AI is taking those things that a human doesn't need to do and letting AI run with those. But those things that you create that human connection, or that you create that human to human connection, are so critical to free up your humans to do that. Letting AI take some of that stuff off their plate so that they can just focus on that really critical piece of connection between your organization and your client. It is so critical. So I think you're right on the money.
If I could elaborate on that, I think
Sure.
AI is great on work augmentation.
Mm-hmm.
I think you run a risk when you go to full work automation. When you take the people out of the process, you run the risk of having a non-people centric process. And I like to say AI is created intelligence. AI doesn't yet have wisdom. Maybe one day it will. But understanding that difference is the key human aspect that I think is still critically needed.
Mic drop. I think that was right. Exactly. So thank you so much for joining us today. This was a fascinating conversation, and I think people will be beating down your door shortly, hopefully. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
MTMG, guidance that empowers.